All right. Mike, this is not an EHC podcast. This is WFNY TV. I don't even know what to do. Is there like a channel we have to turn on to make this work? You've done it before. I don't know what to do.
Have we been approved for this channel?
I don't know. They gave me the keys for it, so yes, can put a big X over the top of it though, and I don't know. I don't want to get X-rated with you though.
As long as that's approved.
All right, so let's talk Cavs. No, I'm just kidding.
That'd be shitty.
All right, so we've got to keep this one short, and we're not good at that. We're going to talk about the rumors of the Indians potentially having some sort of deal with the Orioles for Manny Machado. Mike, I mean, we've talked about stuff like this before, and sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong, but is it me, or is it, if we really wanted to talk about how many people that Chris Antonetti has talked about this winter, we could probably have a 17-hour podcast, couldn't we?
Yeah, I'm going to break some news for everybody. Not that I'm a super source, but I know that Chris Antonetti has had conversations with the Marlins about Christian Yelich. I can confirm that. But now, yeah, I mean, as Jim and I have talked about, like, this Morosi rumor is mostly just like, hey, this is a dead off season. He needs to run this out. Of course, the Indians checked in on Machado. So I think in that vein, like, we're both, like, we all acknowledge that this is just like a silly thing, but like, why the hell wouldn't we talk about how we could build this deal? Well, like, because everybody in the world can tell you this tweet doesn't matter, but let's talk about how we would build this deal.
So I mean, well, first I do want to talk about something before we start having the fantasy and the fun. Let's just look at the common sense of this deal. So there's nowhere for Jason Kipnis to play other than second place. I mean, okay. So let's assume that Michael Brantley is healthy and limping around left field all year. I mean, if you make this deal, like, what do you, like, how does that work? Do you put Machado? I mean, obviously Machado at third, obviously Jose Ramirez at second. And I don't know, you just have a $13.5, $14 million guy just kind of hanging out on the bench.
Yeah. No, I don't know what you do. You know, I think the bigger thing, too, is there's no way the Indians can afford what they'd have to pay Machado, it sounds like, with Kipnis on the roster. So, yeah, I think Kipnis would immediately get, but he would be kind of either in the package back to offset some salary, or he would be immediately dumped, which...
I mean, that makes some sense. I mean, I think in a lot of potential deals that have been talked about over the winter, putting Kipnis in the deal didn't make sense because we're looking at salary dumps potentially. But this one does make a little sense. I mean, they could use Jason Kipnis, so that could be okay. So let's start building this thing. I mean, we can use Jason Kipnis if we want to, but obviously, if you're dealing a 25-year-old third baseman who's been kind of the anchor of your offense over the past several years, and you're looking at a potential $300 million candidate or more, what kind of this is the tough part. Like, what are you looking for a year's control? Now, the counter to that is you still have guys like Moustakas out there. I don't think Frazier's gotten signed yet. Like, there seems to be the market doesn't seem to bode well for the Orioles right now. Looking forward, I mean, looking for a deal now or even in July. I mean, we could probably steal him, right?
Yeah, there's been some weird takes on this subject. I just think if you look at the last year and a half of deals of guys with a year or less remaining on their contract, the returns are really small. I mean, JD Martinez is not quite Machado caliber, but he came back for 5 months for basically nothing to the D-backs. You look at Marcell Ozuna, 2 years left, multiple 4-WAR seasons, I believe. Yeah. Basically nothing to the Marlins. Cheaper, multiple years of control on Ozuna. So, yes, Machado's the best player of that group, but there's 1 year of control left. And I just think that we're operating in this really diminished market. And then you pointed out how free agency impacts this. I mean, I've talked about this a little bit with center field, how like there's a point at which Lorenzo Cain is going to become so affordable that it's really going to like some team's just going to say, hey, I don't want to give up my best prospect for Christian Yelich. I'm just going to go get 3 years of risk with Lorenzo Cain for a little more than I'd pay Yelich and not give up a prospect. I think Machado is similar in that Moustakas isn't a great third baseman, but you can't extort a team for a year when this guy is absolutely going to leave. And I think he's more clearly going to leave than a lot of players we've seen dealt for a year in the past. You know, there was still a chance JD Martinez stays. There's still a chance other players stay through these contracts. Manny Machado is going to go get like $280 million, and it's going to probably be in New York. Like, we know what's going to happen. And so I think it's really tough to get, you know, value. And we've seen that rental players are decreasing in value. So yeah, I don't think it should be, you will give up a good player back, but you aren't giving up a big package of good players. You're giving up one good player and maybe a flyer.
So let's talk about that one good player. I mean, obviously, I think any smart team is going to ask for the arm first. So Tristan McKenzie, I think, would probably be the guy they would want back as that guy. I don't think the Indians have any intention of getting rid of McKenzie, although you could make a case that since the Indians really don't have any other arms like him, and since their window is kind of loaded full with the guys that they do have signed up through 2020, 2021, 2022, it could be possible that they're okay getting rid of McKenzie. I don't know. Are you looking at one of the top 2 prospects here, or would you say that they could get away with maybe a 3 or 4, looking at a Bradley potentially, or someone of that nature? There seems to be a big jump to me there, though. To me, if the Orioles aren't going to get back one of our top 2 guys, or a top 50 guy in a deal for Machado, I think they're just going to swallow and keep him. That's just my thought.
Yeah, it's really possible. You know, I don't think it's going to take a McKenzie or Mejia. I think they think that's what it should take. And their ownership group is kind of unpredictable. So maybe that's how it shakes out. They don't do it for less than that. But I do think the deal that makes the most sense from both teams' perspectives is the Salazar deal. I just think that's very possible. I know that that's something they've actually discussed materially. I think you do Salazar in a tiny part. They get 3 years. And granted, Salazar has a high ceiling, but he also has massive injury risk. And the Indians get a year of a superstar to put next to 2 other stars, which, it's kind of worth it. I think this is the first time that you and I would both do an all-in deal at the same time.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I honestly, if you started really rooting around in the Orioles, you could probably convince me that a Salazar, Kipnis salary dump would make a lot of sense. You could probably even sneak away a lottery ticket in a deal like that. Happen. I definitely would be an all-in. I would really be interested in Machado in any form or fashion. Not really keen on getting rid of our top 2 prospects, as you mentioned, but you could probably twist my arm for 1 year. I think a guy like Machado added to that, gosh, that infield would be insane. And the offense would immediately be, again, one of the top in the league, although I still think they're going to be anyways. I don't know, Mike, percentage-wise, do you think this is going to happen? Okay, one other thing about Salazar, too, and we'll probably get to this in other podcasts down the road, but you're willing to get rid of him, even in this deal, thinking about the, the lack of depth we may have in our rotation.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta gamble somewhere, right? I mean, I wouldn't be comfortable. I think you're right. I think it is a really tough upside sell. But I would have to gamble somewhere. To me, you don't deal any of those 6 because I love this crap. Like, we already have the first, Tomlin and Clevenger and Salazar are competing for 3 rotation spot stuff. And it's like, first of all, one of them is going to enter and exit spring training hurt. Second of all, all of them are going to throw 120 innings if they're in Cleveland, unless their arms are amputated. So maybe we don't do the stupid competition thing.
You and I have been down this path We've been involved in this path. Yeah, we're long past that. I totally agree. I don't know. I think when you put Manny Machado on the roster, I think I'm all in on whatever you want to give up. I was just throwing that out there because, if we only did like a 5 or 6 minute anything, that would be some sort of, I don't know, something bad would happen somewhere. All the beer would dry. That's probably what would happen. So we're going to close up shop there. Check out WFNY TV as always. And don't forget about our podcast. Mike and I are starting right after this. Positional previews, starting with catcher. For the third straight year, we're going to have the same exact conversation. All right. On that note, we'll see you soon.